Now for global business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Dr. Abasi. Ayo, welcome back. Good morning to you. Rufai, my man, good morning to you as well. Good morning to all our viewers, Arise News YouTube viewers. I see you. Hey, Rufai, good morning. So let's quickly get through a lot today. I'm going to rush through this. Kicking up with the Asian markets, you will see that only the Nikkei 225 is in positive territory. And in fact, I mean, it's barely there. So much of this is as a result of inflation coming out of Australia. You heard Adefemi Akinsanya with our awesome reporting this morning talking about Australia's moves to try to limit the number of students coming in because housing prices are going up. That feeds into inflation. So let's quickly get to Australia's inflation figures for July, year on year, that just came in and there's a story here, but so it came in at 3.5% year on year for July. The forecasts were for 3.4, so it came in higher than the forecast. However, it was lower than June at 3.8%. So Australia also, they released the minutes of their last monetary policy meeting, and in those minutes, the monetary policy had debated raising interest rates in order to try to combat rising inflation. So it's above their own 1 to 3% target, I think is where it is. So the markets reacted to that in bearish fashion. Now, we're still in Asia. We go to China quickly. Canada has imposed 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles to take effect on October the 1st. And look, this is coming in, along with the European Union announcing tariffs, with America announcing tariffs. You are seeing a coalescing of the U.S. and its allies to squeeze China. So Justin Trudeau has joined that. Let's quickly take a look at China's response coming from the Chinese Commerce Ministry. I think it was early this morning. They said China is strongly dissatisfied and firmly opposes this. Canada claims it supports free trade and the multilateral trading system based on WTO rules, which of course run by the fabulous Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala as Director General, but it blatantly violated those WTO rules and announced it will take unilateral tariff measures by blindly following individual countries. It is typical trade protectionism. Now, there's a very interesting twist to this here, and that involves Mexico. Hopefully, you have an image of all the players involved here. So you know that President-elect Claudia Sheinbaum is going to be taking over in Mexico, and already you have Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, and Ursula von der Leyen of the EU all coming together to squeeze China. If you remember the last trade war between China and the US, 2017-2018, that was put forward by Donald Trump. He acted alone. This time, you've also got Japan and the Netherlands joining the US to put curbs on exporting chips to China. So they're working together. However, Mexico has a dilemma here. Chinese electric vehicle companies are building factories in Mexico, and Mexico wants that foreign direct investment. So what is Claudia Sheinbaum going to do? Is she going to align with the US and Canada and the EU and also place tariffs on Chinese items coming in? Or is she going to, take that Chinese money? Remember, President Tinubu himself is heading over to China. China is still very, very important when it comes to funding things. So it's going to be, and then of course there's the US election. So who is coming into power? If Trump, Rufai accurately Rufai talked about a report on what it would mean for the US deficit if Trump comes into office. Inflation will also go up because Trump wants to put in tariffs to make up for tax cuts. The revenue that he's going to lose in tax cuts, he wants to make up for that with tariffs. So look, my own personal bet here is that the Chinese, the Europeans, the Mexicans, they all want a Harris administration because they are more, they are not going to be putting tariffs and everything. So we'll have to see what happens. But Mexico is in a really tricky spot now. And speaking of which, we still have more news on electric vehicles because XPeng has announced a new mass market car. I think it's called the Mona MO3. So mass market, meaning that it is actually a lot cheaper. So they announced this yesterday. The stock price rose about 6% in trading this morning. It retails for about 119,000 yuan, so that's about $16,000. It's under $20,000. It has a range of about 515 kilometers on one charge. There's a max version, so if you want something with more features, that is going to retail for about 155 yuan. That comes up to just above $20,000, 21,000. For comparison, the Tesla Model 3, the cheapest Tesla Model 3, which will be competing with the MO3. That retails for about 239,000 yuan. And that is after Tesla had to cut prices in April because of competition. And look, as much as they cut prices, that is still what, a $32,000 car compared to a $16,000 model. So and then, by the way, if Trump comes into office, Tesla announced at their last earnings call that they will be halting their new gigafactory in Mexico on the presumption that Trump comes into office, and that will raise their costs. So you can see what, and Elon Musk is endorsing Trump. It's all very, very interesting. Let's quickly touch on Germany. Germany released GDP figures yesterday. Germany is really teetering on the edge of recession here. The Russia-Ukraine war really affected them. If you look at their GDP numbers, Q2, 0.3%. Quarter on quarter is actually contracted by 0.1. Employment was up, but these numbers, consumer spending was up just 0.9%. Imports down. Germany is really struggling right now. There's a quick chart. If you put a chart of the GDP growth rate year on year, you can see the amount of time spent in contraction territory for much of 2023. They're out of there now, but then again, Germany, as they say, is the sick man, sick woman of Europe. Those stopping Russian gas, cheap Russian gas coming into Germany because they wanted to punish Russia for the Ukraine war has really hit Germany hard. So they are trying to put in reforms to turn the boat around, but things are really tough over in Germany. My man Javier Milei is also in the news. Javier Milei and Argentina are doing something similar to what Nigeria has announced with placing a hold or halting a key tariff imports for food, certain items. So Argentina is trying to reduce inflation. So it's called the PAES tax on imports. They initially increased it in December, right after he came into office, to 17.5%. But now they're bringing it down. The gentleman to the left of your screen is Luis Caputo. He's the economy minister of Argentina. Then you've got Javier Milei on the right-hand side of your screen. But look at the amount of money it earned for Argentina. It earned about $4.5 billion. But the issue is, look, as with reforms, as what we're seeing in Nigeria, reforms are not easy. He has brought down monthly inflation, but year on year is still over 200%. So Milei has had to track back now on that in order to sacrifice revenues for reducing inflation and cost of living. We round off with Nigeria. Today's This Day newspaper, Nigeria's newspaper of record. You've already talked about this extensively. The IMF making headlines saying that Nigeria has to stay the course on reforms. Also, I think right about the masthead, you also see that the Food and Agricultural Organization, the FAO, says that multiple Nigerians are facing food insecurity. So we actually, because this is Arise News, we have the biggest guest. We already had Christian Ebeke, the IMF representative for Nigeria, who Dr. Bati pointed out at the LCCI gathering where he made those comments. We had him on the Global Business Report. Here is him talking about the need for cash transfers to offset some of the cost of living issues. I'm also talking about the fact that reforms need time.
On the social transfer issue, this is a key issue in the report as we cover it. We understand there is a lot of pain right now for Nigerians as these reforms are being implemented. You have a cost of living crisis with high inflation. Food inflation is 40%. And you have these policies that are being put in place, especially the direct payment to vulnerable households that the federal government has decided to basically revamp, right? And this is extremely timely because it helps to address one issue that is very, very important, which is food insecurity. It's one way of reducing the pain on vulnerable households, but it's also something that helps to complement the effort that you do on the reform front, right? Reforms take time before we can really bear the fruits, but in between, you have to think about putting together some guardrails to really help the most vulnerable, the one that cannot immediately take the full opportunities that the reform are able to bring. So we are fully confident that as these direct payments or these social transfer as put in scale or scaled up, this will bring tremendous help for the most vulnerable.
All right, let me just quickly round off. I couldn't help myself with, I just wanted to do a little currency conversion for you all. Vimbai did bring up Kenya paying about 400, how many billion in fuel subsidies, yeah? So that's about, almost $350, $400 million. That's money that could have been gone elsewhere. And then very quickly on the Ekiti matter, just to point out that, I think I already touched on this, so maybe I don't need to go into it, but none of that 20 billion naira has been spent on that airport. Just for context, Ekiti State's internally generated revenue is about 26 or so billion naira. It went from 17.5 to about 22 or 23, 24 billion. So this airport will be about 60% of that. So no money has been spent yet on that airport. That is our update for you all on this hump of the week.
I mean, Rotus, we have to just say this. You see, I'm happy you brought out the case of what is happening between tariffs, between China and America and a couple of other countries, especially on electric cars. But the truth is, if government do not support their businesses, they will not get an edge. China is number one in electric cars today because in the last 10 years, the Chinese government has spent well over $200 to $300 billion on most of these companies to make them viable. And also, we should tell Donald J. Trump that protectionism will never work in the world. You need to be able to have a level of trade. I will take you back historically to the 1800s. The Economist magazine we all read today was a reaction to the Corn Laws. When people started advocating for the repeal of the Corn Laws, the likes of Thomas Badgett and co. That's to show you that it's not today nations try to be protectionist. Britain was trying to be protectionist then, but it didn't favor the British economy. They lost from it, and that's why a Wharton Business School model is talking about the fact that Trump will add 4 to 6 trillion to the deficit, while Kamala Harris' plan will add 1 to 2 trillion to the deficit. Let's be realistic.
All right, very quickly, I was just going to touch on the IMF. Now, over the years, whether 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the rhetoric has been the same. Build on the key reforms. It's going to take a bit of time, continue, bold reforms are making a change. If you look through the reports of IMF on Nigeria, it has almost seems like the same script. The only thing I would say is that whilst the government or this administration is implementing these bold reforms, can they also include the other recommendations as from that interview you demonstrated? Cash transfers, having a social register. Those conversations are still not had, and that's why the most vulnerable people are still highly impacted by these bold reforms that look good for the economy but bad on the individual. Okay,
perhaps the most important news today is that NVIDIA is going to release its fourth quarter straight earnings today, which this year they have done about 117%. In terms of what they've reported. Wall Street is excited. The stocks have edged higher, just because everybody is waiting for NVIDIA, and simply about the importance of the artificial intelligence boom within the stock market. As for Canada, you'll recall that in May, the U.S. increased tariffs against China EV manufactured vehicles by 100%. The EU followed with 36.3% increase in tariffs. So what we're dealing with is trade protectionism, and that's why the Chinese are saying, "Oh, this is a violation of WTO rules." Well, they will probably go to the World Trade Organization to complain. But in any case, competition in international commerce is as old as man. So when you trace the history back, you trace it even to the pre-colonial times. So thank you very much, Rotus.